Welcome to another episode of The Cynical Writer. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that my books are available in the description section. My most recent being The Ecstasy and the Ignominy, which is basically a literary historical epic. And so, since I'm going to talk about the plight of authors in today's video, the least you can do is try to help me out with that. I think you will enjoy it. But anyway, this is the first episode, however, of The Cynical Writer where I am actually filming showing my face. In my previous episodes, I had been hiding behind an image, but the technology, though, that I was using to do that, it's not very efficient, and it takes a lot of time to edit properly. And so I just decided to continue the series like this. At least to episode 100. I'm going to do at least 100 episodes. And this is the first time, actually, though, that I've shot anything wide like this. Normally I'm holding my phone vertically. But the thing is that because the Cynical Writer series was a widescreen series, I decided to film everything like this. I'm gonna film it wide like the series was, and this series will be exclusive to YouTube. A lot of my other content I post on other sites, but because this series is exclusive to YouTube, I'm going to film it wide. And so anyway, the topic of today's video, though, is: has social media ruined authors? Well, in some ways, I think it has, and in other ways, I think it hasn't. It's been, I think, both beneficial and a detriment. It's been both a blessing and a curse. One way that I think it has ruined authors is that in modern social media, the author often becomes the main product, not their work. It used to be in the past that if an author became famous or got interviews or whatever, it was because their book got traction, and then they would be interviewed. So in the past, if an author became famous, it was because of their work. But now, if an author becomes famous, it's often, if an author's work becomes famous, it's often because of the author. The author has become the main selling point, not their work. And I think that's very unfortunate, because now, more than ever, it is very difficult to separate the art from the artist, because they're intertwined because of social media, because especially self-published authors don't have the luxury, for example, of having a traditional publisher promote their work for them. And then so what they have to do is they have to promote their work on social media. But then they have to play the politics of social media. Of course, nowadays, even traditional publishers don't do a lot of promotion. The author is expected to do all of the promotion, and that can place a lot of pressure on the author. And quite often, if a book succeeds, it will often be because of the charisma of the author, even though just because an author is good at social media, or just because they have some kind of charisma, that doesn't mean that they've written the best book. Those are entirely two separate skills. Quite often, actually, the best authors historically have been socially awkward. They haven't been people who have been really comfortable in front of the camera. But nowadays, it's kind of led to, I think, a situation where the extrovert authors, so to speak, are actually have an advantage. It used to be that introverted authors were the ones who had the advantage, but now it's actually more of the extroverted authors have the advantage. And so quite often, if a book succeeds, it will be because of the author's charisma, or because of their production value, or because of their editing skills. It won't be because they've actually written the best book. And so social media is far more about your personality than it is your skill as a writer. And I think that's very unfortunate. And it's led to people essentially just buying books based on recommendations and not because they necessarily want to read a book. It's all about the social media hype. If they see that a book is popular, they will buy it. It's all about what the social media algorithms. That is what dictates who succeeds and who doesn't. It's not actually about the quality of the book, and it's not fair, but unfortunately, that's often what happens. Now, of course, there are some authors who, and that's actually made it. I was about to say that, of course, there are some authors who get lucky in that regard, but it's one of those things where when it comes to social media, an author's fate is often left up to chance, and it's made it where again authors cannot really be reclusive or mysterious anymore. Because it used to be that an author could be reclusive or mysterious or private and still have book sales, but now authors are forced to put themselves out there. So I don't think many like reclusive authors like Cormac McCarthy or Thomas Pynchon or whatever could actually succeed in modern publishing. I don't think that they could, because they would have to do things that they would not be comfortable with in order to succeed. And now, admittedly, social media has provided some benefits for authors. One of the benefits is that authors don't have to go through gatekeepers anymore. And so it used to be that if the publisher didn't like your work, well, then your work just wasn't getting published. But now can authors can publish themselves and get their work out there. Now, some people will say, oh, but the algorithm still is kind of a gatekeeper. Yes, it's true. The algorithm is a kind of gatekeeper. But at the very least, an author can get their work to the public and at least have a handful of readers. I know that if I have even a handful of people reading my work, then it's worth it. And I also like to publish my work for my own satisfaction and for posterity reasons. So it used to be that that if you wrote a work that wasn't commercial, then and the publisher didn't choose you, well, then you were essentially just writing for yourself, or you could choose a vanity publisher and try to sell your book that way, which I may have done if I had been alive back then. But essentially, you would be confined then to selling to people in your local area. You wouldn't be able to sell to the entire world like you can on Amazon. But so I do think that that self-publishing overall has been incredibly beneficial to authors, and social media has been beneficial in the sense that they can get the word out. But the negative side of social media is that the author, because social media is personality driven, so the negative side of that is that the author often becomes the selling point, not their work. And so I think that social media has ruined authors in the sense that they have become personal brands where their work is not what gets the attention. All the attention is on them. But at the same time, social media has helped them gain readers. So in that sense, I think that it has been beneficial. And so overall, it's a very mixed bag. But I do think also another problem though with social media is that you can have so many different kinds of trends, and for example, romanticy and other kinds of things, where people can be and this is where readers can be recommended things that aren't things that they would that they would necessarily read all the time, but because those are the only things that are being recommended to them, then that's all they read. And so you end up creating trends that end up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy where readers will only read romanticy or this or that or whatever, which to me, I honestly think that romance, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but yes, romance is a legitimate genre, and that things like Pride and Prejudice and other kinds of things, I do consider those to be legitimate works of art. And even Jane Eyre is a kind of gothic romance novel, even though it's more gothic. But I do consider romance novels like Sense and Sensibility and others legitimate works of art. But at the same time, I think that when you essentially have a book where it's all about smut, so to speak, to me, that is essentially just porn for women. A lot of people think it's not because it's literary, but essentially it's porn for women. And I think that that's not to excuse men. I actually think that it's one of those things where I think men have ruined action. I mean, have ruined cinema to an extent because all they care about is, and this is an oversimplification, obviously, but because cinema tends to cater to young teenage boys who like superhero films, and that's made superhero films incredibly shallow. But then young women, and not just young women, but but mainly young women, have now ruined literature because romance has become the domineering force. Where and so other genres have been shut out. And so now I'm not to say that there's anything inherently wrong with, again, romance or action films or superhero films, depending on what the kind of thing it is. I think there's a difference between a quality romance novel or a quality superhero film and it catering and one that caters to the lowest common denominator. To me, that's the problem. It's not that there's an inherent problem with the genre, it's when it caters to the lowest common denominator. And I do think that social media helps perpetuate a lot of that. And so overall, social media is a very mixed bag. It can create trends that are awful, and it can also make it where the author is the main focus and not their work. But at the same time, it can also help authors get their work out there and help them get exposure. And that can be a very good thing if you find the right readers. The problem is, in order to find the right readers, you often have to sift through a lot of filth along the way. So overall, I hope you enjoyed this episode. My books are linked in the description section. And until next time, goodbye.